In this particular video, you're going to see some slides coming up on the steps to take to fix a Powerbond seam that has separated or has gaps. For whatever reason, the seams are not supposed to come apart. If the material was installed correctly over a proper substrate, smooth and clean, and the seams were sealed correctly, the product should not separate at the seam like this particular site did. This site has existing adhesive on the substrate with trowel ridges. It most likely was not acclimated, but in any other words, with the traffic and with time, the seams did separate, and in the past we would have to patch this or do something with adhesive. I'm going to show you how to fix this seam with these slides using a Cool Glide seam tape. That's the premium double stick tape and a Cool Glide iron. Not the utility, but the premium double stick tape. In these slides you'll see the process I go through in loosening up the material on each side, placing the tape on the substrate, re-stretching with a crab stretcher, re-welding with Tanda CXL seam weld, and in the end you'll see a seam that was gapped and is no longer gapped. The gap on these seams were somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. So as you see these slides coming up, I'll voice overlay each slide and explain to you what we're looking at and how to repair these seams. Just make sure you go to your local tool distributor for the Cool Glide seam iron. This particular picture is of the substrate. You can see what seam weld they tried to apply ended up on the substrate, not on the edge. And this substrate does not meet Tanda standards. We're supposed to have a smooth, clean surface. This is a peel and stick RS product. Should never try to put any kind of a peel and stick product or pressure sensitive adhesive on the back of products onto a substrate like this. Dust and adhesive residue will allow the material to release, and in this particular instance the material contracted at the seams, and we were left with the next slide, which shows the seam gap. This particular seam gap is around 1/4 inch wide. It goes all the way down the length of the room. In the past we would have applied adhesive, maybe some stay nails, but now I'm going to show you using a Cool Glide premium double stick tape how to fix this with a crab stretcher and some tape and an iron. This slide shows you the tape put under the seam after we've loosened both sides of the material or both sides of the seam. Apply the tape to the substrate. This tape is a double stick tape, so once you get it up underneath there and get it in the right place, then you peel the back off the tape and stick it right to the substrate. I've had success sticking right to existing adhesive residues in the past. It's worked. You might want to test it first on your site. So here's a picture of peeling the releasable paper off the back of the double stick tape. Now this double stick tape, once you put it down, it wants to stay down, and especially once you heat it. So make sure you get it right where you want it, because once it sticks, sometimes you can't get it off the floor without scraping it. So it's got some good adhesive on the back of this double stick tape, and it works really well over all the substrates I've tried to use it over. I'd say take a small piece of tape and do a bond test, and you'll know. So once you get that done, once you've peeled it back, I apply a bead of CXL seam weld back onto the edge of the product. Now this seam weld, the CXL, this acrylic weld, is very strong in itself. I like to reapply it only just to seal the seams so that the moisture and the cleaning of the product doesn't go down through the seam. I don't think it would impact the tape, but it's just something I like to do. So it's just another step in the process of fixing it. Once I've done that, I bring both pieces back together and I re-stretch them. Again, I've loosened both sides, so the crab stretcher is able to pull them back together where we have the edges touching one another with this new seam weld applied. And you don't want to bring it in too loose, you don't want to bring it in too tight, but just make sure the two edges get put down just like in the original installation. So sometimes I use these seam straps after I've crab stretched before I use the iron. It allows me to move ahead a little bit. You can buy Velcro straps just about anywhere. I made these myself, and if you're interested, shoot me an email from this video. So the Cool Glide iron at this point is ready to hit the start button. It'll melt the tape underneath, which melts the tape to the back of the two sides of the Powerbond. Now with the seam back in place, re-stretched where it's supposed to be, and resealed, we finish the fix by applying the Cool Glide iron to the tape. And you want to check the settings on the iron. You have low, medium, and high, and the T setting. If you have any questions, go to the Trax website, and they'll explain what all those settings are for, but it's critical you know what those settings are for. So here was the seam prior to the fix. Of course, we had up to, on this particular seam, a 1/2 inch. This is about a 1/4 inch gap right here prior to the fix when I first walked into the room. And then coming up after using the Cool Glide seam method and after heating the tape and sealing and heating the tape, this is the seam result. It came back together and it stayed together. I'm making this video most likely, I would guess, somewhere around a 1.5 years after I've done the seam repair. We know that it lasts and we know that it works. Email me if you have any questions.